Hello and welcome back to Aurelia. We have completed this part of the city in the last episode. We extended the tram line going through this residential block, made some plans for that line for the future, and today we will turn our attention to the opposite side of the big city park that we will actually finish very soon as well. Here we need to build some kind of a line of buildings, forming an outline of the park on this side of it, going all the way to this interchange that we prepared here a really long time ago. So it's pretty straightforward. Let's go build it. This place is going to be kind of divided in two main areas. The first one we are going to build right now. It is basically the extension of, let's say, the residential hive, the extension of the residential hive, maybe. I think this place we built kind of a long time ago as well. This is the place where we built, or in that episode, we also built that corridor for that the highway, like a soundproof barrier corridor, something like that. So this block in here, we kind of need to do in a very similar style as we did before. So that's going to be very, very easy. Just like with the previous episode, like we did the opposite side of that tram corridor on that residential hill, we also needed to employ basically the same style as before, which obviously meant that it was not really, all that much designing in that process. We just copied whatever we already created before. So that's kind of somehow what we're going to do in this part right here, except for this big office building, because I really wanted to put something on this corner where we have that elevated or slightly elevated tram road with those tracks, the line going into the park, so that we needed to have some kind of a building to kind of just make it more nice, right? Anyway, so like I said, this part of the block, kind of a very straightforward building. We are going to put the same residential buildings that we put here on the other side of this part of the city district, I should probably call it, so that it's just going to look very, very similar. And like I explained many times in the previous and maybe some other previous videos as well, it's just going to tie together these places very nicely, because it's not really going to look like the city is just combined of various blocks that are not really similar in any way. So this is going to do the opposite basically. So it's going to make it look like these blocks are very similar because they are made of these same looking buildings, right? So no surprises in this part, but in the end it's actually going to look kind of all right, because it's just going to make that place much bigger. And now we are going to leave that part of today's build, and we are going to go here, which is I'm not sure, it's probably not exactly all that super clear where we are right now, but we are right next to that highway interchange, the one that we saw in the opening shot, right? So in here I wanted to do some kind of an extension of that tram line. Again, just like in the previous episode, we also have a tram line going around the big city park, but just on the opposite side of it right here, right? So we also need to figure out how to extend this one. But compared to the other one that we did in the last episode, I don't think that I'm going to treat this one as some sort of a light railway. I'm definitely going to keep this one as a tram, as like a street tram. That's obviously going to go on like the roads that it's going to be shared with cars and pedestrians, obviously. So it wouldn't make much sense to put some heavier vehicles on it. So this one is definitely going to keep being a proper tram, right? It's also going to have probably the stations a bit closer to each other. So yeah, it's going to be different than the one on the opposite side. But in the end, I think that they are actually going to meet, those two lines, because once they kind of clear the park area, they will probably converge to at least one location where there's probably going to be some kind of a transfer station, together with some trains that we need to also extend past this area. So that's actually going to lead me to probably do some very, very important decisions later in some later episodes, probably after we finish this park. Decisions related to public transport and how to extend it, to the rest of the city, let's say. Anyway, to kind of go back to what we are doing in here. So I decided to do some sort of a tram station, but do it a bit more interesting. Now I'm just going to do an outline of this place. I'm not really going to finish it in today's episode because, like I said many times before, I don't really want to finish projects that I'm not exactly sure how they're going to be looking around but I'm just going to start it, and then when I go to it and do, you know, the rest of the area, the surroundings of it, then I will probably finish it as well, right? So I just built basically like a little roundabout underneath this main avenue. It's not really going to be connected to the main avenue, as you could have seen. It's obviously going to be connected somewhere else so that cars can reach both levels, but it's not really going to connect directly to the roundabout in here. And obviously the tram is just going to cut right through it, through the center, and in the center there's probably going to be some kind of a stop, probably detailed, but like I said, we are going to deal with that in the future. But now we have some more important issue, and that is obviously finishing this outline of the park, like I said. So this road that I'm building right here is actually going to be the outline of the park. At first, I actually cut off a lot of footage from today's from this week's building of Aurelia, because I really wanted to do it really differently in this place, but then I just scrapped it all, destroyed it, and decided to do it all over again. And this is what we ended up with. And I think that it was a good decision to actually change it, because I wanted to do this place, I wanted to cut into the park a lot more, let's say, and put a lot more buildings around this place, but it kind of felt like it was not really needed. And to be completely honest, I didn't have you know, that many ideas about what kinds of buildings I'm going to place there, so I just decided to do it like this, with only a couple of buildings, basically like one line of buildings, let's say, around the outline in here. So from that little roundabout that I'm going to convert into the tram station later on, like I said, we just did some commercial buildings, and then we slowly transitioned in here into residential buildings. I finally connected that elevator, like you could have seen. We placed 4 elevator buildings on each side, on each corner of that interchange area a really long time ago. And in this particular area, the first elevator is actually going to be connected to, let's say, the bottom layer of the bottom level of this place, right? I don't think that that's actually a mistake. I don't think I connected it actually with pedestrian paths. This particular elevator. There are going to be more elevators in today's episode. No, actually no. I'm going to keep the elevators for more next episodes, but. Yeah, this elevator still doesn't have the pedestrian path, so that's something that I need to remember to add in the future episodes. Hopefully I will remember it. But anyway, let's move forward. So in here we have that highway ramp, let's say. That's obviously connecting this main avenue to all the highways. And we kind of needed to do something about it. So I decided to put it into some sort of a tunnel and put glass over it like this. We also put that the residential block building in there, not the corner one, but this one that's in the shot right here, which is actually going to have the entrance to it, well, kind of like a fake entrance to it from this side, from the main avenue. Technically, it's going to have the entrance, I think, from some other side, just so it's working, or maybe I switch this building for procedural objects so that it won't complain. I don't remember at this point, really sorry. But I don't think it's procedural objects, because you can see that the terrain is actually raised around the building, so it is probably functional, and I don't think that the building actually was complaining, so it's probably fine. And then we put another one of this building and put it underneath this one to kind of create the illusion that it's just one big block, and it's kind of, you know, oriented this particular way. And as you can see, I put a third instance of that building right there, and then just some kind of a road as the entrance to it. Now I really needed to do something about this loop, the highway loop in here. As always, it's a loop, it's a rounded structure, let's say, which kind of calls for a round building, right? Just like I did with, if you remember, with those elevated parks, I put those, how are they called? I don't remember what they're called, the buildings that are, you know, completely rounded, circle buildings, right? So those definitely fit those loops perfectly, but I didn't really want to put the same building in here, and even if I did, I couldn't, because as you can see, there's that tiny little ramp going underneath all this that's kind of in the way of you know, having like a perfectly circular footprint to work with underneath all these roads. So I decided to go and do something completely different and only have the highway circular, but everything else is going to be kind of you know, 90-degree corners. So I did that retaining wall, which I'm obviously later going to switch. I'm going to later cover inside of it. I'm going to cover, yes, in here, I'm going to cover it with grass and put some slightly taller residential building inside of it. Now, I obviously had to also switch this highway for sound barriers. Well, for no really particular reason outside of having it there, just so it looks a bit better, a bit cooler, because we are kind of in a residential area in here, so the highways probably need to be somehow treated like this. But I think it looks really good, this place. We are also going to do some extension of these commercial buildings, but this time I really do need to use them as procedural objects, because otherwise they would be a bit too big. They would go into that road that's obviously covered right now. So this is almost taking shape, this place, and I really do like this one. It turned out looking really great. I'm going to put one more instance of that tall residential building in here, which is actually going to make it look like, again, like the building is not completely alone there. And I think that a long time ago, we actually put this very building in here on the opposite side of this highway. So again, it's kind of having the similar style as something that we already built some time ago, which is great. That's kind of what I'm aiming for with these kinds of projects. Now, doing these kinds of buildings around any infrastructure that's already existing in this place, it's always there's always the danger of just having these kinds of weird shapes that are just left. So in this particular place, I decided to just put these garages, or whatever you might call them. I suppose they are garages, but as always with Aurelia, there's probably going to be some underground parking, either underneath these buildings with entrances right in the buildings, in the first floor of those buildings or something like that. Or maybe there's going to be some, larger underground complexes somewhere else. I didn't really create any fake underground entrances in this episode. I don't think I'm going to do it in the next episode, but in the next episode, we are actually going to do buildings that do have like a clearly visible entrances to some underground parking. So maybe it's also part of those buildings as well. Or maybe these buildings just don't have any parking at all, because we have public transport very, very close to these buildings. Now we're going back to where we started doing this block. That's with these commercial buildings right next to that tram station, soon to be tram station. And we are just going to cover them with grass like this. I kind of don't want to, at first I didn't want to do that many green areas around the park area, because, kind of make the park stand out. It might be it might make more sense that we actually put a lot more concrete around it, so that, the green inside the park is going to stand out a bit more. But I kind of wanted to do this in here anyway, so hopefully it's going to be turning out just fine. And obviously we just need to decorate this place with all kinds of trees and bushes and shrubs and all that. Not really trees in this area, because we are kind of on top of the buildings. I could place some like low trees or something like that, but this kind of felt much better. And this place where we actually go inside that elevator corner, let's say, that actually turned out looking great as well, which is nice. And this one inside the loop is also not looking half bad. I'm going to place these like panel tiling in here, because this place kind of has a lot of concrete on the ground. So just to make it a bit more interesting, we are going to do this. But I'm really not going to be afraid of doing these larger concrete surfaces in the future, because they're not looking that bad if done right, I guess. I'm not sure if this is like the right that I would like to do in the future, but it's not bad. It's not bad. I really should not be afraid of having like a larger concrete surfaces in the city. Obviously made better with all kinds of decals like the stains and some kind of damage and something like that, which is obviously going to make it look more believable, let's say. But anyway, we moved to this part that we started with, and we are just decorating it. I just put a lot of trees there, and I'm using the same kind of detailing as with the previous block as well. So these kinds of planters right in front of these residential buildings. And that's it. That's kind of almost done with this episode. There are going to be some details in the cinematics that I probably left out from the time lapse, but hopefully you won't mind too much. Like, for example, the elevator building in this particular block. I completely forgot to put into the time lapse now that I look at it, but hopefully it's going to be clear where it was built and what's its purpose. But anyway, we are going to continue with Aurelia with episode 38 next week. We are going to build an area which is very, very close to this place. So stay tuned. And in episode 39, we are going to build the park itself inside of it, finally. And obviously, stay tuned for episode 40, which is going to be an all cinematic episode showing the entire progress in the last 20 episodes. So that's going to be cool. Anyway, ELPHNT is also going to be released next week as well. So that's something to look forward as well. But that's probably all from me. Thank you for watching today's episode of Aurelia, guys. If you like the episode, then you can always put a thumbs up underneath it, share the video with your friends, and obviously subscribe to the channel if you're new here and want to see more of these videos. Take care, guys. Goodbye.